valuable to a lot of people, because a lot of the police tests that were being advertised were just advertised in local papers. So many people did not hear about the police tests that were happening across the state, or happening 2 hours, 3 hours from their house. So what I was doing was I was calling and monitoring every police department in Connecticut every single month, and just mailing newsletters out so people didn't have to rely on buying newspapers all over the state. Some of the police departments, especially the smaller ones, were not happy with the fact that I was doing this service, because it prevented them from manipulating the selection process of the department. There is a law, or at least in the dimension that I was from, there was a law stating that when the opportunity came available, they had to advertise it to a certain number of people. And if the people who were in charge of the selection process were trying to hire specific people for the job, regardless of how fit they were or their actual credentials, then if they had 500 people taking the test when they were just trying to get one person in there, and 450 people did better than the person that they were trying to get in, it was very difficult to manipulate the selection process. So many of the, some of the chiefs of police or the human resource departments weren't too happy with the fact that I was doing this. But at that point, I really didn't, the information that I was exposing people to was public information, and plus the fact that the people who ordered my service were my clients, and they had paid for my service. And the police department, who was trying to manipulate the selection process, if they weren't happy with that, that didn't really bother me too much. Putting the most qualified people in that position was, or the people who were relying on me for that service, were the people that I was serving at the time. So, in the process of doing that business, the internet became popular and the information got pooled. So basically, no one had to pay for the service anymore, and I was stuck doing a lot of work with no income at all. At that point, I started a painting business and a cleaning service to try and keep the information service afloat. And for the most part, bottom line, I went belly up with that because it was just too much work, and I wasn't able to make ends meet. And actually, at that time, because there was just so much work, I became suicidal and I entered a mental institution to, just because I did not want to go on at that point. I just wanted to end it. So I entered a mental institution, and got all sorts of different diagnoses and medications and things like that. And to get back on my feet, I began volunteering at a hospital in the trauma unit. And I was looking to find a new occupation and do something where I could be of service to people. And in the process of that, I was watching, the trauma unit was right next to the emergency room, and so I was watching the ambulances go in and out, and that job looked interesting, so I went to school to become an EMT. I got certified in that and began working as an EMT. Did that for approximately a year, and that did not pay much at all. I was barely able to pay the bills with that job. So I began working at Becton Dickinson, making medical supplies, syringes, test tubes, things like that. And so I was working 2 jobs and still pretty much going nowhere. So then I had the opportunity to join an apprenticeship with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and it was a 4-year, 7,000-hour apprenticeship to become a journeyman lineman. And did that, completed the apprenticeship, graduated there, became a lineman, and began traveling all over America doing line work. And approximately, I'd say 7, 8, 9 years into that, was still unfulfilled in my quest, and unhappy in trying to achieve joy and success. So I was in this bar. I just got out of work and I went to the bar, and a man sat down next to me by the name of Richard Lockheed, and he was a forensic psychologist. And so I said, well, are you taking patients? And he said, sure. So I went and I began psychotherapy, and what we did together, we determined that construction was the wrong occupation for me, and I should be doing something more creative. At which point I began inventing, and I invented all sorts of different devices. A device that you could hang up above a pool table, and it would track the balls on the pool table and communicate wirelessly to your laptop, and then your laptop would help you organize the next shot, and help teach you how to play the game of pool. And from there it grew into a device that would actually allow you to jump through the webcam on your computer and out into the computer, into the internet, and out anywhere in any other computer on the planet. And from there it grew into, I mixed that technology with the technology of a fish finder, and began inventing fishing lures that would actually identify the species of fish and then swim right into the fish's mouth. And it wasn't a lure because it was aggressive. I call it the fish hunter. And so the inventions just kept coming, and I don't know where, at the time I didn't know where this information was coming from. I just was figuring everything out. It was incredible how much information I was understanding and comprehending at the time. But in the process of doing all that, I was pretty much ostracized from my community, and all my friends went away. I had no friends, no one liked me, and I was completely ostracized. So at which point I became suicidal again and attempted a drug overdose. I tried to commit suicide via cocaine. Well, I bought about $500 worth of cocaine, and I was snorting it as fast as I could, just trying to get it done. And this was in a cabin that I was living in Guilford, Connecticut, in another dimension. Not this dimension, but the dimension that I was born in. So I was about halfway through the cocaine, and I hear all this rumbling going on above my cabin, and just planes in the sky. So I went outside and I looked, and there's hundreds of planes all going in one direction, all flying in one direction, and this kept up for quite a while. And at the point, the efforts that were the way these planes were moving, it was just a very calculated thing that was happening. It was calculated and organized, and what I thought was that there was a war going on. I thought America was getting bombed. Although I didn't hear any bombs, there was so many planes in the sky. I had never seen anything like it. So after about I'd say 20 minutes of that, all of a sudden the plane stopped and there was complete silence. Then I heard this rumbling coming out from behind the cabin, which there was 60 wooded acres behind the cabin. So I heard this rumbling come out behind the cabin, and this large black triangle came right up over my head, took a 90-degree turn, and took off. And this vehicle, with everything I knew, was not supposed to be able to fly. I mean, it didn't. It just wasn't aerodynamic enough to fly according to normal means, normal earthly means that I was aware of at the time. So the black triangle flew off, and I looked behind the cabin, and this bright white light rose straight up out of the behind the woods with no sound, and slowly and perfectly still, and no sound at all, and rose up until it got so small it looked like a star, and then it disappeared.